Monday, March 26th. Yes. Could you tell me your name, sir, and some of the jobs that you held at Avtex, when you started? And
my name is Reid Nicholson, and I started out in engineering in October of 1946, and I've stayed in engineering for the other 43 years that I was there. I held different positions in engineering. I started out what is called a helper, which lasted for about 9 months. Then I progressed to what they call fourth class. That was doing minor repairs on shift work. I did that for 8 years. Then I graduated to being a first class mechanic. At that time, it was pretty hard to become a first class mechanic because you had to wait a matter of attrition for the old mechanics to leave before you had a position to fill in for. And it took me about 8 to 8.5, 9 years to do that. And after that, I was a mechanic, I guess, for 30 years. In the progress, I moved up the ladder. The longer they're there, the more experience you have, and more the younger people look up to you for. Because you've been there, you've done that, and you know what's going on. I became a relief foreman or supervisor. I still was on the card, was never salary. I don't think that was my option. I could have been on salary if I wanted to, but I never did go that far. And at the end, I was into training, teaching classes in mechanics, in welding. And overall, to me, it was a good life. It put two kids through college. It built my house for me. And I was never, at times you get a little miffed at things goes on. But overall, I was well pleased with my job and the people that I worked with and worked for.
could you talk a little bit about the phases of ownership? Were there some differences in when it changed hands? Did you notice any differences in management?
After World War II, of course, the government was sponsoring Avtex. Well, it wasn't Avtex then, it was Viscose Corporation then. It was their profits came from the government. After World War II, then they had to start making profits on their own. And in order to do that, they had to speed up the machinery, increase production. The more production you increase, the competition was out there. And in the process of increasing production, they had to increase the speed of the machinery. And the machinery at that time was made for one pace, and when you triple the pace on it, it just wouldn't hold up. And it took a lot of maintenance. At the time, we thought it was crazy, but in order to have a job and have the place running, you had to do it because there was competition from DuPont and other plants. Later on, it got to be foreign trade. I guess that's what killed us in the end, was foreign trade.
Wow, that's the first I've heard that they did speed up production after the government pulled their machinery out.
Well, they didn't pull the machinery out, but they pulled their financing out of it. In other words, you wasn't selling to the government. And like a machine that would run on an 800 RPM motor, they stepped it up to 1200 RPMs. So that ran for about a year. Then they put it up to 1800 RPMs a year. And that's the way it was going. It just, that increase in production and an increase in the speed of machines. And it took more maintenance. And that's what I was in. I was in the maintenance business. As long as the machinery was running good, our work was more routine, but once one broke down, then you had to get with it and get it fixed and get it back on the line again. If that meant working all night then you worked all night on it, which I've done on lots of occasions. It wasn't that you did it, you always got paid for it, time and a half, but still 24-hour days sometimes get kind of long.
What are some of the problems that the machinery had after they stepped up the production? What are some of the things that went down on the machines?
Well, bearings, water polluted bearings. The water would get into the bearings. And it just, a machine that was designed to do one speed and you triple the speed on it, it's just like you take an automobile that's designed to run 55 miles an hour. You take it down the road and run it 150 miles an hour, it just won't hold up. And that's what I found mostly. Now, production-wise, that wasn't a good thing. But to me, working for a salary, got a lot of overtime out of it. A lot of overtime money.
I'm worried about this noise. Wind. It's going to get on the tape.
It is, yeah.
It's getting on the tape. Last time we interviewed in here, it was a rainstorm.
Would you want to come back and do it again? Calmer day.
I'm even wondering if you've said some really good things that I don't want to lose. I don't have the fancy equipment. Let me just start off. Only the machines? Did you also work on other things in the plant?
My job was in maintenance, in engineering and maintenance, and that included staple machines. Some people call them vibro machines, slashing machines, coning machines, spinning machines, physical, well, they call it PT lab, laboratory machines, warping machines, storage racks, anything that moved or was a part of the equipment. But you asked me about some things that, had happened. Has anyone ever spoke of the fire that they had?
No.
I'm trying to think. I can't remember which year it was, but it was probably 10 to 15 years after I went to work. Someone was welding in the double deck area too close to a exhaust duct. The fire got into the exhaust duct, burned all the ducts off the roof. The flame was coming out of the fume stack like a Roman candle in reverse. Of course, the plant was down for months in order to get the fume ducts back in operation, because the production, they use a lot of sulfuric acid, and you get a lot of sulfuric fumes, hydrogen sulfide fumes, and they had to exhaust them to the outside because people couldn't work in there under those conditions, so they had to have the fume ducts and the exhaust fans in operation before they could start the plant back up.
Did you have to help repair all of that?
I was there the morning that it started. I wasn't working in double deck at the time. I was working in Cape Wash at the time, and then you looked up and you saw smoke coming out of the fresh air ducts. That was the air ducts that was coming in. And of course, someone came out and says, "Well, get out of the building." And we went outside, and you could see the smoke coming out of the fume stack. Of course, the fume stack isn't there now. But have you ever seen it?
Oh yes.
Yeah, okay, well. And being in engineering, I had to work on a lot of it. Of course, the production workers got laid off. I guess they was off probably a month or so, a month or 6 weeks before they got back into work. And can you cut it off a second?
Oh yes.
Another, I guess you'd call it, I know it wasn't a catastrophe, but it shut the plant down. In the powerhouse, in shifting from one pump to the other, the fellow opened the valve too quick, and he ruptured a 24-inch water line that flooded the bottom of the powerhouse. That shut the powerhouse down. When the powerhouse went down, everything else went down in the plant. Left visco set up in all of the pipes. And I was called in on that. I wasn't major player in it, but I did a lot of work that would have to be done during that time. And it was just one of those things. In order for it to run, you had to get that pipe back. All those motors on the bottom floor of the powerhouse had to be taken out, sent to Baltimore, put in ovens and dried out. I mean, these tremendous motors. These motors stand 6 foot high, you know. So you just didn't stick them in a ordinary oven. So that took a couple of weeks in order to get that fixed.
Jim Colbert spoke about knowing that viscose fibers plant only had the lifespan of about 50 years. Toward the end, did you notice that the equipment was aging? It must have been harder to have production being at a faster rate and also having the equipment age. Could you talk a little bit about the condition of what the plant was operating with?
At the time that I left out there, the interior of the plant, such as the steel structure of it, was getting in very poor shape. It was from years of being exposed to chlorine fumes. I honestly think that in the section that I worked most in, that chlorine fumes did more damage to the metalwork than acid fumes did. Now that's my own personal opinion. And the steel structural work was getting very, very poor shape. Also, the floors, under the concrete floors, there were caverns. I guess it just happened over years when it got washed away, when it settled, what happened. But you could dig a hole in the floor and there would be a cavern there instead of concrete laying on top of dirt. And they did a lot of work to cut it off.
Sorry.
Now where were we?
Okay.
We were talking about the foundation of the building. So much for that. I wasn't too involved with that. The engineers that was in charge of the structural part of the building had more information on that now. The only part I know about is that you walk by and see a hole in the floor and there was a cavern there, so that's about it.
So the floors, was it unsafe for the workers?
No, the floors were in good shape. They just, when they put those floors in, they were thick enough and heavy enough. If there wasn't anything under them, they would still support you. But, like you said earlier, that the lifespan of the plant was 45 to 50 years. And that time was coming up. The environmental agencies, the state agencies, and everything else was closing in. And it kind of irritated you at the time that it happened, but it was inevitable. But I got out before it closed down. I wasn't one of the ones that was there when it closed down. I had already retired.
What year did you leave?
I left in 1989, on 1st of September.
So you left months before it closed.
And it didn't close down until November.
Wow.
So my wife was working there the night to pull the plug on it. She came home about 6 o'clock. Wasn't a surprise. They just, you just hate to see it happen. One of the, not talking about the engineering aspects of it, but the medical side of it, they had one of the best medical programs. Hospitalization cost me $3.45 a month. Now I pay 50 times that much for a supplement to my Medicare. But if it was running now, I don't think the 345 would stand up. But
now your wife worked there as well.
Yes,
Is she still living? Is your wife still living?
Oh yes.
Oh, we should interview her as well.
Well, she has a little
little different view of it than I do.
We're trying to get all the views. Now, you mentioned earlier it was upsetting for you to see the ventilation stack be demolished. Could you talk a little bit?
I've been there for 43 years, and everyone had bad-mouthed the place, from Washington, D.C. to Harrisonburg. Anywhere it was a standard joke if you went down to the D.C. area and didn't glow like a glowworm, they'd say, where in the heck have you been? Have you been in Front Royal? Yeah, that was a standard joke, but I'm healthy. I know some people got sick, but I don't know whether, can you blame it on Avtex?
A lot of people said that, well, today, of course, everybody's in a fury about pollution, but from what I've been hearing, no one really worried about the chemicals or the pollution as they were working. Could you talk a little bit about the awareness of, was this polluting things, or were people at risk?
I didn't think so at the time. I mean, when you're breathing something, if you don't like it, you back off from it. Okay, but it could have been very harmful to some people, but I don't think it was harmful to me.
Being in engineering, are you familiar with some of the devices that were put into place as environmental controls became laws? Did the Avtex site have anti-pollution controls added?
Yeah, but most of it was ventilation where I was at. Just get the fumes out of the way. And other than that, I don't know much that was done right where I work. In other words, ventilation and heat control.
How did they get the ventilation? How did they get the fumes? Apparently there weren't fumes where the workers were. Was there a check on that, or?
Oh yeah, there, like in the spinning platform, you have viscose running into a solution of sulfuric acid, or a certain amount of fumes. But right above this, you have a duct that's pulling those fumes out of the way, taking it on across the roof, up that fan, out of the fume stack. The ventilation was pretty good, I thought.
So all of the ventilation systems arrived at the stack and then went up?
All those that had sulfuric fumes in them. Now, if it was just an ordinary ventilation system, but it didn't contain acids or anything, they just spin it to the roof to shoot it right up in the sky.
Yeah, I'm trying to find out what you know that maybe some of the other people in production wouldn't be aware of. I know that some of the people who worked on building the plant had its own water system. Could you talk a little bit about the physical plant, how it was set up, how it ran and operated, what some of the things are that were going on with ventilation, the water? Are you familiar with some of that?
Just vaguely familiar with it. I know that they pumped the water out of the river, that pump house, with screens, and pumped it up and filtered it. Had water softeners, where they needed soft water, and they had a lot of water throughout the plant, but that wasn't drinking water. You had to get your drinking water from the town. And most of the water that they used was for washing up or in production.
Okay, I guess we better get back to your area of expertise. You were in charge of making sure the machinery was operational.
That was my basic problem. In the later years, my expertise, or what if you like to refer to it as that, I don't know necessarily do that, was in hydraulics, on hydraulic presses, and I did a lot of work. Of course, I did a lot of work on other things, but that was my main thing. They had hydraulic presses that pressed those bales of staple. Why they call it staple, I don't know. It looks like cotton batting to me, but it's rayon cotton batting. And they press it together and send it out. And it was interesting. Hydraulics is you do amazing things with hydraulics. You can look at a backhoe and see that. For the last 25 years that I was there, they combined what they call mechanic, first class mechanic, and welding together. So I did a lot of welding too, maintenance. That's maintenance welding now. That's not going out and building something new. When something breaks, have and do it, and you go weld it back together.
Did you send off for parts like they do today, or did you try to improvise and even design and make your own little pieces that had to go back into the machines?
A lot of times we had to build our own, rebuild them. But they had a large parts place. In fact, they had a lot of people ordering parts all the time. And well, I don't know how to start from that. But my mind's going blank on it. It does that sometimes anymore. But I've made a lot of stuff, from scratch. But
I guess since this day and age, it seems like everything is getting smaller. The computers are smaller and the brains are bigger, and the little pieces that you get from the digital computers are just really little. I have trouble in my mind imagining what these huge machines were like and what it was like working with them and repairing them. Well, how big was the hydraulic machine in the staple department? Could you explain some of the machines?
The older presses, they had a piston ramp, and they had it down in the ground. It was probably 40 foot down in the ground, and you pumped oil in the bottom of it and pushed it up. Some of the newer ones, they built the rams overhead, some of them on the ground. But I don't know how to explain to you, like number 10 press from the ground to the top was probably 40 foot high, and it had a 12-inch piston in it, and it had a 48 by 24-inch press head on it. So that was the size box that it made. 48 inches long, 24 inches wide, and about 3 foot thick. That's that size bale it made. And
let me just focus on this. Did you have to get inside the machines to fix
yeah,
them?
but you never get in the side of the machine unless you unhooked it electrically, because you didn't take a chance of someone else accidentally or something else turning it on.
So you had to go inside of those machines.
Oh yes, indeed. But you always unhook them electrically, so no moving parts would be operable. One gentleman was telling me that he went to Mexico and installed one. This is back in the 50s, and those people were so fascinated with it. They was looking at it. This one man stuck his head over and watched it operate. He came down and decapitated him while he was standing there. So that's something to look forward to.
Yeah, there were accidents at my friend Jean Baltimore said some man fell into the vat the day they closed it, and they didn't know if he was depressed and fell in accidentally or not. Were there a lot of accidents, do you know?
At the plant, I know of two people that to go in a closed container, you had to have it blanked off, so all the pipes had to have a blank in them, so no fumes or anything could get in it. And you had to have a laboratory report, test the air to see if it was breathable. But for some reason or other, these fellows went to lunch, and when they came back, the one man went down in to go to work, and he passed out. Of course, the other one rushed in there to get him out, and he passed out too. There was 2 fatalities right there. Hydrogen sulfide, deadly. One whiff, you're gone. Then, that's a dark side. I'm really not talking. You can edit that out.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. Is that the only job that you basically held? Was that the main job? I guess it was the main job you've held in your lifetime.
Yeah, the maintenance department. From working with my hands and the tools, then I progressed up. Then I became a maintenance supervisor in the last few years, and then taught school, even in welding and maintenance. And
did you move here to take the job, or were you already here?
when I got out of the service, I lived in Rappahannock County, in Flint Hill, and after a summer of fooling around after being in the service for 3 years, I decided to go to work and applied here and got a job. After I got married, I decided to move closer to the job, so I moved over to Warren County. I've been here for 35 years, or better than that, 40 years.
I guess I've heard that the work conditions were a little different at the plant than in some other jobs, that the doctor was here, that there were round-the-clock nurses, that health care was really good here. How did this job with the Avtex, or Viscose as it was called when you began working, was it called Viscose at that time? When you started?
American Viscose Corporation,
Viscose.
ABC.
What were the times like when you worked here? What was the work day like? How were the workers treated? How did they perceive their job? Was this considered a really excellent place to be employed?
I would say so. It takes a certain person to work a certain job. Now, some people, you don't work a job that works from eight hours straight. A lot of people don't do that. But the ones that did work the job, they considered it a good job, and they got their pay at the end of the week. And some people might call it getting into a rut, but you have to survive. And most of the people that I ever talked to, they wasn't dissatisfied with their job because they had good health benefits. That was the best part of it. And they liked the job. Of course, the money, I liked the money. Of course, when I started to work, I believe it was 89 cents an hour. When I left out there, I was making 13 something. But when you go down to the city, you can get 28 something now, but you have to drive down there to get it.
So it was pretty good pay for this area then.
Yeah, at the time, yeah.
Now that you've retired and the plant is closed down, in the process of being remediated, as the term goes, looking back on the plant, could you make some statements about your thoughts and feelings about the plant itself, working there, just your life and times here?
Well, to me it was a great experience, and even though it was inevitable and I knew it was going to happen, I hated to see it close. But of all the negative reporting it was put out about it, I felt it should be left as a memorial. I know that's the wrong attitude to take about it, because you have to have progress, but that was my inner feeling. Why don't they leave it sit there for a couple of years, just as a memorial? But that isn't the way the government works. I know that the EPA has a job to do, and they do it the way they want to do it. But when I ride by here and I see these people out here in these white suits, and that's to hose off an automobile before they let it out on the street. And I used to walk in and out there every day and every day and every day. It's like they're preventing hoof and mouth disease to getting out on the street. When I used to walk in and out of there every day, and I'm still the same person. It seems like they just go overboard. But that's the U.S. government, I guess. I'd like to interject this one. To me, it's humorous. In the Staple Department, they have, well, I say 10 or 15 years before they shut down, they put in a public address system all over the whole Staple Department. In other words, you can go to a speaker phone here, holler, say, Mr. Legg, and then he would probably answer well from the other department. This would happen on the second shift or the midnight shift. And these guys, in order to have something to do, they would run this train over this voice, run this train. One guy here, one guy over there, and one over there. Over this PA system, and it would sound real, like a train coming down the track. Of course, Mr. B.N.A. Schuer and Mr. Pedro Legg being Mr. Shift Foreman, he hated it. He tried to catch them. And if he'd have let it alone, it would have probably faded out by itself. But since Mr. Schuer and Mr. Legg made such an effort to stop it, that just made the guys want to do it that much more. So every time Mr. Schuer would step into the plant after 4 o'clock in the afternoon, they would some way run that train for him. And he would get furious, but they never did catch him. And it just struck me as being kind of funny. If they'd have just let it go and laughed about it, they would have went out of existence in no time. But the more they fought it, the more they would run it. And it really sounded like a real train coming down the N&W track.
Did you have a garden here? I noticed that some people had the gardens. Could you talk a little bit about the social life and some of the other things that, aside from the work?
I don't quite follow it. Social, you about my life?
Yes, I noticed that there were other things going on here at the plant aside from work. I heard some people had gardens.
Oh yes, but like I said, I worked so much overtime, I never did fool with the garden.
So you didn't really participate?
Not in the garden.
They had like an Avtex monthly publication and stuff. Was this, I guess what I'm getting at is trying to find out, after people put in their 8 hours of working, what else was involved in being here at Avtex? Did they have clubs? I heard they had a baseball team.
They had one very good baseball team at one time, but they had bowling leagues. They had bowling leagues. Some of the old fellows was bowling up until last year. Was originally the old bowling league, and a lot of people were involved in Little League. I know Mr. Lund took a lot of scrap material that they had there. Of course, the plant gave it to him, and he went down and built backstops and fences for the Little League part. That's when Little League first started out heavy. So they was pretty good at community activities and stuff like that. Of course.
You being the person who kept the machines running, Could you talk a little bit about how you felt when you heard that they had just pulled the plug and things had not been shut down maybe in a proper way? Could you talk about what you think of the shutdown, if you think it should have been different or...
Well, a year before it actually shut down, they shut down for, what, 8 hours, 24 hours or something. And they got a reprieve from the government because they were making fiber for nose cones on the missiles. And it ran for, I believe, another year and a half or so. But in the end, I don't think they had any other choice. The state was after it for water pollution. And they didn't have that much production going on at the time. And it was either, I don't think you would have, but go to jail or pull the plug. So, Mary Sue Terry was Commonwealth, was it the Commonwealth attorney? Yeah, she was an attorney general for the state. Said she had to do this or do that. So, he pulled the plug. Of course, now she says he should have come back and negotiated, but it was just a matter of time. The competition's from overseas, and he lost most of his business at the end anyway, and it was just time. The lifespan was just over.
Did you know John Gregg personally?
Well, I've sat at the table with him and talked to him, but I don't think you'd call him a personal friend, because he would go around and talk with everybody. And at the time, Mr. Gregg taking over, FMC Corporation had it. All right, they said, well, we've had enough of it. We're going to close it down. I think he worked for FMC, so he talked them into letting him have it, to run it, and he got financing from somewhere. And he ran it for 10 more years. Okay. He ran it long enough for me to retire, and I'm very proud of him for that.
I know you kind of feel sad about having the buildings demolished. Do you have any visions of how you would like to see this area changed? Do you have any thoughts or comments about the plans for turning it into a park? And
No, I think it's a very good idea. I mean, at first, it's been 10 years, no, it's been 11 years since it went. But at first, you know, like I said before, the place got so much bad publicity. You couldn't see a pick up a paper or a magazine article or something that didn't have some negative things to say about it. And I thought it was unwarranted, but you know, as time goes on, I think probably the best solution is to clean it up if they can make a park out of it. So I have no problem with that now.
I've heard that the way the plug was pulled without having the pipes cleaned of the viscose, or the fact that the sulfuric acid vat sat there for so many years, continuously eating away and corroding. I heard that added to the amount of cost for the cleanup, probably several $1 million, because it wasn't shut down properly. Do you feel that? Do you?
Well, I had never thought about that part of it. It probably would have had some effect on it, but was he supposed to shut it down himself? Or he said, Mr. Terry, here it is, if you'd like to shut it down in your own way. So, who knows?
It took several years of having it sit here for something to be done. I think that is the reason. The state of Virginia sued the U.S. EPA and won. Do you remember that case?
No, I don't.
Okay, they did. They won some financing. And just cut it off for a minute.
Well, I'd like to go on the record that the American Viscose Corporation, FMC, and Avtex was very good to me. And I'm very proud that I could have been a part of it. They sent my 2 children through college. They bought my house for me. I got a fairly decent retirement. I'm not a rich person, but I get by pretty good. And I think they did me well by being here. I have nothing negative to say about them. But thank you.